fire department last year. And LoSAP was a program that was adopted by the state. It's probably been 15 years ago, yes, 10, 15 years ago. And the purpose of it was to act as an incentive for volunteers to stay with the first responders. And what I was told by the fellows who have been active for some time is that back when this was instituted, all the towns were given the option of doing a buyback, so that guys who were active for many, many years prior to adoption could be sort of brought into the system, or they could simply start on that date and go forward. And when the fire department was asked at that time which way they wanted to go, they said that they did not want the town to go to the extra expense of buying backwards, but they wanted whatever the maximum allowable spending for LoSAP to be paid each year from that day forward. We made some inquiries.
So what year was that? 1999 was that start.
It's 14 years, 15 years. I believe we've made some inquiries to people who served on the Township Committee at that time. We can't verify whether that agreement was understood to be the case on the part of the Township Committee. Certainly I have no reason to doubt the fellows who told me that story. So that's just some background.
The maximum this year is $15.89 per member. It was $15.85 per member last year, so it's only gone up $4 per member.
How many members?
Well, this year there are more members than last year that are eligible. According to the list, I got a list from Mike Covan for fire members. There are 24. Unfortunately, could not get a list for first aid, although Mike Covan believed it was 15 members. So that's what I put it in at, 39 members. Last year we were at 35 members. So it's 4 additional members, and the maximum went up $4 a member.
So can you ask me how many members there are, or how many members qualify?
Well, how many members are we paying for this year?
Okay.
And how many?
Because there are more members than
Yeah,
that.
they don't qualify.
So it's 4 times more of the 1,500, and then it's $4 on top of all the others? Okay, all right.
So what's the total expenditure we're looking at? If we do the
The
maximum?
budget, $61,971.
So we're investing over $61,000 in the firemen for their pension plan, which is part of retention and recruitment.
Fire and first aid.
Fire and first aid. So this is a program that my time on the committee, we've done a maximum contribution 2 of the 3 previous years I've been here. 1 year we kept it flat. We've not cut it. So just want to put that out there. It's for everybody to know where we've been at. We have not cut that program.
How much did we spend last year?
$55,475. So it's up $6,500.
Well, the rub is obviously there's 4 new members, so that's the big change.
Right.
It's not just $4 a head difference.
That's something we'll take. That's a good problem, I guess, right?
Well, I'm just
Fact
saying,
that we have
good or
more
bad, it's costing more money. Yeah, I mean, we have more members, and that's part of, I know, the overall picture is recruitment is a problem, and without going to the classic historical argument, it's a lot less expensive than having it paid for in both cases.
Now, again, I don't have a confirmed list from first aid. We tried, we haven't gotten one. As I said, Mike Covan gave us an estimate for first aid. He provided a list for the fire company.
Do we think it's lower for first aid?
I don't think it's going to be lower.
Yeah.
So there's public safety.
Then the LoSAP.
It's more.
Yeah.
That's a question. Membership aside, is there roughly an average percent increase on a year to year?
No, I mean, it goes by the consumer price index factor, what the maximum is.
Does it-
year it was only 0.25%.
So that's the $4. So in other words, there is no request for it above and beyond.
No, we can't go above.
We can't go above that.
Can't go above the
Okay.
max.
So it's just a membership issue.
It's a number of people, right?
I think it's gotta be easy enough to get find a number on the rescue squad. Was that
Well, and I will before we actually adopt the budget, but right now I'm having an estimate from them.
So I guess the question that we've got ahead of us, do we want to increase to the maximum, which there's an indication that's a commitment that township committees before us made. Is that right? That you would do
Which
the
one?
maximum.
At some point, you do have to ask yourself, 14 years of doing the max, except for 1 year where we did flat, we didn't do a max increase that year. There is a payback. So while they didn't want to do the back pay in 1999, at some point, when you go forward 14 or 24 or 30 years, everyone has been paid back to keep doing the max. If you get years where you didn't do the minimum, if that makes sense to everybody, just want to throw it out there.
Well, my only thought is, and I know that the budget this year is rugged, 61,000, how much is there a cost in general of the same, similar size force in both rescue squad and fire department that's paid? I'm gonna say it's 10 times this maybe, is that safe to say?
Oh, it was a big force, oh, yeah,
Huge.
huge, many more expensive, sure.
Huge.
Well, I mean, the only thing I would say is that, and this may get back to further discussions with both areas of the rescue and fire, but having the additional personnel on board, I think that's important. I don't know the criteria of if you just sign on 1 year, you're immediately qualified for those.
You have to have so many credits.
You have to have points, you get points for number of
So
trained.
these 4 new persons are qualified based
Right.
on the points.
Right.
Based on their actual performance, they're just not being the members.
And that's all listed out in our code, how they get the points, yeah.
So we're 6,000 more than we were last year essentially, right?
So the next question I have is, when I look at this year, is it showing the actual spend or just what we put in the budget? Like, did we spend all that money last year?
55%, I think expensive.
So all was spent, there was no one that, didn't qualify or something?
No, once that list comes out, they're qualified, they get paid. Yeah.
Just want to make sure, thank you.
Because the list basically reflects the previous year.
Right, correct.
So it's what they've already done, it's not a projection.
Understood.
And they're on the calendar.
Yes.
Well, my thought is that I think it's money well spent. I know that there's a back and forth internally and the like, and I think we're all aware of what that is, but that if you look strictly at the dollars and cents, it's much less expensive, obviously than a paid course, but at the same time, to have this person's taking time out and schedules in order to do this type of work, I think we all can identify to a certain level, but at the same time, I would approve this expenditure in the additional for as it stands.
Dan?
Yeah, this is something that we're going to do, is the expenses are great down the road as we look at paid by. It's cost of doing business.
We've got some other tough issues ahead of us because there is talk about incentives for joining, which is, there's no money in here at this point, incentives for joining, but they have spoken with Glenn and I about possibility of in some way assisting them. We have one work session on it, we're gonna have another work session once we get through the budget. But
Actually, Madam Mayor, I think we need to put that work session before the top budget.
Before we,
yeah,
Before, yeah, so it'll have to be one of those.
one of those February meetings. Thank you.
What I would say, to your point too, Mayor, is that this issue will be integrated into that discussion, because I think there has to be some sort of a trade-off here in some fashion. This makes it very encouraging for persons, of course, that are on it too, but that I agree that we're going to have to discuss this and have some real criteria as to what we want to do, for example.
Well, do you have an opinion on whether or not we go to the max on this one?
Yeah, I don't think that the savings, unless we cut this thing by a third or something, I don't think the savings is going to be worth $1. So I think, I would go with this.
And that CPI, I don't know if we're going to get it much cheaper.
that is the lowest, I was just looking back, that's the lowest it's ever 2004. The highest it was in 2004, 5.2% increase. But this year,
It's a good old
0.25,
days,
yeah.
Good. Good.
I'll just make a comment. I'm probably going to be, I have been already, even more long-winded than usual because we're being recorded. I feel obligated to bring up topics and over-explain them because, well, the reality is we've been through this so many times. There's a lot of unspokenness here, so I think we sometimes mistake.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's
Have you waived your right to attorney?
I have not taken the fifth yet. That's fine.
That's good.
It's a little known fact that Bill O'Reilly started at this level of broadcasting. Wow, what year is it?
All right, I think Jay can come back then.
Can I find the next thing to excuse myself on?
You know, to Dan's point there, you know, and if people are watching this video, we do have this whole budget goes for public review, public hearing, and these questions can be asked at that time, or any of us can answer questions. You know, there's a question about what we're doing here.
Actually, I just had a question on Melissa, just because Mr. Mulligan raised an interesting point. When the buyback was an option, how many years back did they look? Because a lot of the first day of the fire company, and even at that point in time, had 30, 40, 50 years of experience. So I mean, you could have been talking hundreds of thousands of dollars of spend.
I'm sure
My
there was an
recollection
app
is
or something.
If I remember what Charlie told me correctly, I believe it was about 10 years.
Yeah,
I think they could have
think
gone
they
back
would
about 10 years.
cap it at some point, but I don't have any idea. Again, wasn't involved with them setting up those apps, so I don't know.
So even at 10, if you go back 10 years and $1,000 per year, remember me, still could be talking $100,000 contribution.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the next is salary board.
That is under your spreadsheets. See, summary spreadsheets. First tab in your operating budget, summary spreadsheets. If you look at, right after your title page, there is a spreadsheet there where I summarize everything for you, okay? Okay. Right now, based on talking with my employees, and I know that Jay and Glenn are aware of this, they were on the personnel subcommittee last year. They have asked for, obviously, a bigger increase than they have been getting, and I explained budget constraints to them. So right now, in the budget, what I have is a 4% pool that starts, goes right back to April. So it goes April through December in this budget, okay? And you will see that in your 4% increase column. And down at the bottom, that tells you how much the salaries would be increased. So there would be a $29,181 increase in the budget.
So you're talking about 4% across the board increase
Yes.
to the employees.
Yes, and that would be a pool. So not everyone would necessarily get 4%, and that whole pool may not be.
So it's not across the board, it's.
Well, I put it in the total, what the max would be, so you could see what the pool was.
Okay.
But if everyone doesn't get 4%, then you will use up that whole pool.
Would you, in your formula, did you think some might get 5 and some might get 3?
No, the max would be 4. The max would be 4, and some could get 2, some could get 3, some could get 4.
Okay.
That's how the formula passed. Now, with that being said, I don't believe that this committee is going to approve a 4% pool based on what the budget looks like. So I relayed that to personnel. I've explained to them what the situation is. They have come back and asked for then a 2% increase across the board, meaning no more 1, 1.5, 2, that everyone get 2%. And I am asking that it retro back to January rather than April.
So your last column here.
The last column, which is a $19,000 increase rather than a $29,000 increase. Now, that's what I'm asking for. If you approve that, the operating budget that you see right now is going to go down by $10,000.
And then everything we've done at the last.
And how does the operating budget go down by $10,000?
Because right now I have the maximum, I have that $29,000 increase in there, I have the 4%. If we cut it back to the 2%, then I go into every single department and I change the salary and wages.
So base, what you got going here?
It's 10,000.
But we can say 15 if we do 2% across the board from April.
Correct.
And we had employment issues on why we did April, because we had people leaving wanting retro pay back to January.
Correct, but they could leave in June and then still get rental back to April. So they lost in that 1 year, the January through March increase, basically. This would just.
The idea was to follow the corporate world and say, okay, here's April, you're not gonna get retro pay if you leave. If you leave in May or in June, well, okay, you'll get the retro for the 2 months, but it's not gonna be a material issue, because usually we would already adopted the budget by June. The issue that I have is, one, I don't want to go back to January, because it's the wrong precedent setting. Two, the idea of the merit pool was so that we were incentivizing employee behavior and saying, okay, if you do well, you get the max. If you don't do well, if you don't do your job, you're not going to get the max. And since we instituted the merit pool, we've never spent the full pool of money.
Right. The problem with the merit pool at 2% is I don't have much room.
Right.
It's hard to say, unless you're terrible and you're getting 0, and I don't have that, it's very hard to work within 2%. Because people get, why do I get 1.5 and she gets 2? Why do I do less for 0.5%? 4% gives me more flexibility. And that's the only reason why we were asking for 4% merit. But again, that's going to could cost more money, because there will be some people who do get the 4% or 3% versus 2%.
The idea of doing retro, I mean, that seems a little odd to me. I mean, being in the corporate world, you get your promote, you get your raise at the point that is issued to you, which would be when the budget is
It was always when the budget was issued, but it went back to January because it was for the calendar year. And the 1 year, we decided to change it. I don't think too many municipalities have it that way, to be honest, in January to December. And I'm not saying we have to go back to that. This was just morale with the personnel. They're not happy. And we've talked over these issues before. And, the money situation is the money situation, and I've explained that. So I'm just trying to think of a way maybe to show them that we're giving them something extra if they can't have the 4%. But again, it's up to the
Can I ask this, let me ask this question. If you had the 4% pool, could you manage to the 2% number, so that you're incentivizing some people a little bit more, but then those that didn't do the job are still getting, less, and then the money then stays within the town, but it gives you that flexibility on that, to give something a little bit higher than 2%.
Well, this for context, we just approved LoSAP based on CPI, which is a fraction. So, I mean, a lot of these in the past used to be based on some sort of inflation number, which, and this 2%, let's say, is much further beyond that. So that's some of the context I'm looking at it from as well. I understand morale and the like is an issue at any level, township, state, federal, and so on. I mean, there's something to be said too, is that, it's nice also to have a job, and I think that's probably pretty primitive to say too, but it is nice to be working as well. So I know everyone here at the town hall and the like, and there's no slam based on anything sort of personal, so I don't look at this personally. I look at it, I think from everyone's approach, is that I'd like to have morale up in town hall like anybody would, but also, I know plenty of persons that aren't even working, so I think that's kind of the road that I have. So, to some degree I default to, because I wasn't on the personnel board, but the opinions that would come from personnel board, is morale at a point where we see people saying, I'm going to leave because other municipalities are paying more than 2%, or I'm going to leave because I don't like the environment, or I'm going to leave because I didn't get part of this merit pool or something.
We've had people leave who previously come to the personnel subcommittee to complain that they were unpaid. But comparable for more money? I don't know.
They'll tell me yes, but there's no way for me to really know that. And then most of the time they go to private, they don't stay in government.
Well, in the private pool, the two surveys that we've looked at in the past, I didn't circulate the data this year. The range that I saw this year in the private sector between 2.8 and 3.2% is what the private sector's salary pools are in the survey data.
So I come at this maybe a little differently, and I'll come back to maybe a little bit of the police conversation. We've laid no one off over the last several years. We are looking at a very, very difficult budget. We haven't even gotten into the tax rate yet, and we're talking about getting up 2 and 4% raises. The reality is, I can't even contemplate a raise for anybody until I settle on where the heck the tax rate's going to end up. Because if we end up at a multi-cent tax increase, I find it very hard to be raising.
Same with give raises.
To give raises, exactly. And in fact, again, payroll's our most controllable expense. There's darker conversations we might need to start having maybe this year or next year about headcount and about where we can find savings. I hate to do that, but those are just conversations that we have to have. And we need to work through these things and make sure we're putting everything on the table.
Okay, just keep in mind, we haven't laid anyone off, however, we have combined several positions or made full-time positions part-time.
Absolutely.
So,
Right, we have made changes.
yes.
Absolutely.
Dan, are you suggesting though that we have this conversation, but we don't make any decision whatsoever until we get down to the bottom of this list?
I really, really do. I urge it, actually. It's
Okay.
something we need to circle back.
And just keep in mind that right now, there's the 4% in there, so you're talking $30,000. So when we're talking about the tax rate and tax increase, it's $30,000.
Got it.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I don't want to douse the budget of back of employees, but I think it's presumptuous of us to talk about salary without going through
I agree.
these lines.
So is the discussion over then at this point?
I think, yeah, I think we're all, we just feel like we need to see what our bottom line is
Yeah.
before we see if we're in a position to offer raises, and if so, what
Okay.
kind.
I didn't know if there's more points to be aired.
Anything else on personnel that you want to put into?
That's all I remember from the meetings we had.
Yeah, I think that I'd like this year's personnel committee to actually talk about what is the acceptable rate of turnover that we, because ideally, 0% turnover is a bad thing, in my view. I don't want any organization, township or private, to have 0% turnover.
Right.
What's the acceptable level of turnover that we feel is appropriate? And also, what is, if we have a discussion with Denise on what's the amount of investment that you take whenever we bring in somebody to find out what the cost is to onboard someone. I think that would be helpful as well.
And I think you also have to understand there is always the looming threat of unionizing.
Of what?
Unionizing. And every employee has the right to do that. So there is always that there as well. And if they unionize, and looked into some other towns that have unionized, they will get some kind of increase every year.
And and we mentioned consolidation earlier. Are we at the point where the consolidations are over? I mean, there is no.
We're pretty bare bones in the areas that I can control. There's construction, but that's separate. They're paid for by fees, and that's a discussion we would have to have in a couple of years if their trust fund runs out of money as far as consolidating in there. But town hall itself, now public works, they've been down 2 guys for years now. We can't cut any of them, so. Yeah, we pretty much consolidated. We went from full-time tax collector to a part-time tax collector. We no longer have an assessing clerk. We simply have a part-time tax assessor. We have a combined administrator and CFO, which were basically two full-time positions before. We've pretty much combined, I think, everything that we can at this point.
And we're talking the person that we have the biggest combination of positions, the admin and CFO.
Correct.
The only thing I would say that's maybe pertinent here too is that, and you probably know this already, but on a per employee basis, the benefits costs are going up anyway, which I know we don't have control of. And that just gets back to, again, it's not just having the job too, but there are benefits that are significant as well, which are going up, and then this on top of that. Now, granted, some may say it's $20,000. What does that really take? But I think to some degree, as far as what Mr. Mulligan was saying, from a symbolic, if not taking literally the cost of it, is that if the benefits are going up on average,
Well, actually, benefits, and you'll see in group health insurance, have gone down in our budget because of the premium sharing. The employees are premium sharing more every year. Come July of this year, they are at level 4, which is the max. So it's premium sharing as much as someone would be in the private sector.
I was gonna say, we're all experiencing that in private sector.
Right,
also.
so that, the benefits that they had before have actually gone down in that regard.
So you're saying our healthcare spend this year for the town is less than it was last year?
Yes.
So what is it last year versus this year? Because I don't remember.
Okay, does that?
It's, I'm looking in the, so group insurance budget last year was $749,707, and this year the budget request will be $698,486, down $51,221.
Okay.
and is there, with pension, is there similar?
Pension goes up, pension does go up, our contribution as well goes up, so more of that our chat, but the pension bill does go up.
So what's the pension
What's
number?
the,
ERS.
We're all in the same section, right? Denise?
I'm looking at my summary sheets, it's just easier than flipping through the whole book. PERS, last year, actually PERS went down, PFRS went up. PERS was 162,811 last year, it's gonna be 158,189 this year. Because your pension payment is based on 2 years prior, your second or third quarter employees. So you now have less employees and salaries have gone down, total salaries, your pension bill's gonna be a little less.
But at the end of the day, we're still spending on benefits just a little bit.
Right.
Over 800,000, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, over $800,000 just on benefits.
no, yeah,
Well, that
we were
includes-
saying last year too.
The health benefits include police too, so just keep
But
that.
it's a big nut that you're paying on benefits.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't have any control of it, but I'm just trying to get a beat on, is it up 60,000 on benefits plus another 20,000 on 2%? I'm trying to get an aggregate number to make some sort of sense of it. And so, I mean, that is interesting that those costs coming down, roughly 60,000.
Well, not to throw more into the mix here, but I think next year we probably need to have a discussion about whether, you know, I'm sensitive to the employees, I really am, but I think we need as a small employer to have a discussion as to whether we provide medical benefits to employees or whether we just give them a cash allowance as some employers are doing, saying, go to, you know, when the exchange are really operating, go to the exchange and here's the money that we'll give you to buy insurance on the exchange.
Yeah, I don't know if we can do that as a municipality. I mean, I know they can probably opt out if they wanted to and go shop around, because that's what the Obama healthcare is all about. But I think we have
If
to,
it's offered to you, I don't think you can shop around.
I think we have to.
I'm not an expert on it, but I
And
don't
we
think
can
that's.
provide, we can not use state health benefits, but they are the cheapest.
No, we don't want to be a small employer purchasing benefits.
Right.
But I think the discussion we need to have is, do we want to be in the state plan and provide benefits, or do we want to provide an allowance to the employees of X dollars, and then whatever they do?
No one will take it.
No, they're not going to have a choice. We're not going to provide
I
benefits.
think the,
Well,
I don't know if we can.
I got a feeling that's next year's discussion, though, that's not this year's discussion.
But this is something I think the personnel subcommittee needs to look at, and I can facilitate that discussion.
I'd like more information,
Yeah.
like that, do a cost comparison.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's not something it's one of, it's a draconian cut, I understand.
agree.
But I think it's just something that we need to look at, that a lot of small employers are looking at.
Well, if numbers keep going the way they're going, it might become, head count or reduced benefit costs, and that's where you keep people employed.
Well, Jay, one thing I'd say, so there probably is an ability to cost assess what a plan you just described compared to the current one, right? So that you can make an actual apples-to-apples comparison and then decide.
Yeah, and we would need to see, if 10-year law comes into play with better benefits and that.
Absolutely.
So, there's a lot that goes in there, but I think it's a discussion that we need to have to prepare for next year.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've agreed to not make a decision on salary at this point, take it to the end, so.
Sounds good.
Next item on the agenda is
Right.
increases in the operating line items.
Right, so what I suggested is in your summary spreadsheets, I have a budget summary that goes department by department. And the last column will give you, there was an increase from the budget request of 13 to 14.
There is a copy of this
Do they have,
here, if anyone wants to look through it.
we only have 2 books.
This is the capital one, I believe that's the operating one.
Is that operating, or is that capital?
The little one's capital.
That's
The
capital.
thick one is the
That's
operating.
capital, those 2 gentlemen have the operating. Okay. Okay.
Are you looking at this page?
Yeah,
Yes.
where are we?
But you guys could share them.
Summary spreadsheets, the very first tab.
Yeah.
Okay.
It starts
Look
with
back,
administrative and
you'll
executive.
see budget summary,
Oh, A and E, okay, thanks.
right here. Okay, yeah.
The long
If
sheet.
we have page numbers.
I just thought it's gonna sit here and just
I
listen to us
don't
talk
know,
about this.
honestly, because I have to add so many different things in here that if you have, everyone has it, no, Susan, you're not in the summary
I
spreadsheet.
don't know either.
No, it starts with A.
What tab?
Oh,
Front tab, summary spreadsheets.
Oh.
It starts with administrative and executive.
Right.
you did it at 10:58 in the morning?
Yeah, that's what Glenn just said. Mine says mine says actually 11 PM, so must be on the week.
Oh, you have the modified sheet.
Yeah, mine is modified, because I made
Mine's
complete
10.
changes on mine already.
Uh,
Okay.
Yeah, she got a better one.
Okay.
So if you look in the last column, you'll see budget increase. Don't pay attention to salary and wages, obviously, because
Mhm.
we're gonna discuss that later. It's really just a wing at this point, okay? And I'm gonna go through pretty much and explain to you what the differences are so that you understand, the differences. Right, so we're in A and E, and there is an increase in expenses. That is for IT network, okay, that's for Abdul.
Which line are you
Here,
on? Okay.
Got
A
it?
and E.
Okay, got it.
Okay, that is for IT network, okay?
The 56 to the 82, that's what we're talking about?
We're talking about, yes,
Okay.
yes, okay. The,
Stop. I'm
Wait,
sorry.
yeah,
Where is
I'm all
56? Okay, oh, I see, 56,
213
82.
budget,
Yep.
214
Okay.
budget.
Oh, okay.
it's really the last column you have to, yeah.
All right, the last column.
Okay,
Right.
finance administration, there is an increase of 1,400. We hired a new employee, and one of the things that we offered to him, since we were not paying him more money, we brought him in at lower salary, was that he wanted to take the CFO classes, and I agreed we would pay for 2 a year. That was all. It's gonna take him about 3 years to finish them. And so I budgeted for that. Now, that cost is more than what this increase is. I cut back on a couple of other line items to make up some of that.
This was the commitment that you made to him when we hired
Right.
him. Okay.
Right.
And just to make a comment here, because I know it's been raised in the past, there is no increase in the township committee or mayor's salary.
Correct, there's no increase in that. That has stayed the same. Actually, we cut it, what was it, 2 years
We've
ago?
done it 2 years in a row.
And it's not gone.
20% less than it was.
Right, right.
I find that prevents a lot of conspicuous consumers.
That's right. Enough
Tax,
said.
tax collector is up, and that is because we have asked the tax collector to look at doing online payments. If we do that, there is a cost for the software for
And
that.
that's what the expense is.
That's what the increase is. Now, I'm not 100% sure we're going to do it, we're looking into it. We think it's a good idea. We're not necessarily sure how we want to handle it, whether it just be directly out of their accounts or whether it be credit card. Because if it's credit card, those fees get passed on to the credit card user.
Can you do it as a PayPal type account or not?
Not for the taxes, I don't think. That's something we're looking at for recreation and those kind of fees. So, we have from Edmunds the quote, and that's what the tax collector put in. It would be for additional software.
And
If we could avoid the credit card fees, that's.
We won't pay them, they would, right, they'd have to be
And
passed
you put
on
on
to
the user, but the user may sit there and say, you know what, if
It's
my tax bill's $17,000, that 2% credit card load, well, they may say the 2% credit card load is worth that $17,000 worth of points that I'm getting on my.
That's what I'm
And
saying.
that's what some
American
people
Express,
do.
I do that in a heartbeat,
Right.
you know, because you pay it off that month anyway. You're
Right.
paying cash, so.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're looking into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Tax assessment. If you see the increase in expenses for tax assessment, look on the line above and see the decrease in salaries. Steve no longer has an assessing clerk on staff. We are no longer paying Social Security, we're not paying benefits. We are, however, paying a contractor who comes in as necessary to help him during the busy season, appeal time, and during the time that he's getting the assessment book done, which is now. So that's why you'll see an increase in OE, but there's a decrease in salaries, okay?
So we saved $5,000 that way.
Right. Audit, there is an increase. Our auditor has not had an increase in over 5 years. I know times are tough, but I can't keep telling them no every year, and so we negotiated it would only be $1,300 increase, and so that's what's in for the auditor.
And no increase for the next 5 years.
Correct.
And this is under the tax assessment line items, that's where you still are?
No, we're down under professionals and boards.
Thank you, I appreciate it, because you skip by tax map.
That's a negative.
I understand.
Oh, that's why I skipped, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Denise, why were we 5,000 above our budget request? Budget expended was 5,000 above budget request for the audit?
Because we did the bond sale,
Okay.
and we had to pay additional money for them to prepare the offering statement. Yeah. Legal, this is something that you're gonna wanna flip to your tab and look at why legal is going up, and then you guys can make a decision, as to whether you want to increase it or not. So go under your professionals.
Under capital or?
No, already go.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, professionals. Okay. Look past audit and legal's next. Okay, so, litigation is where the increase is. We have right now pending litigation for condemnation. We have pending litigation against tree contractor. And we have Castoro, which, lucky us, we got pulled into from years ago because the trucks moved dirt through Cranbury. And so that is where the increase comes from in legal.
Yeah, pastoral lawsuit, that's like 1980s, 1970s.
Yeah, it's a whole bunch of towns.
Yeah, no, just
It's
kind
way,
of
way back.
stating it out there, we're paying for past issues here.
Sins of the
Unfortunately,
father.
Yeah.
unfortunately,
Very high increase.
we could be responsible for $30,850 of it.
Right.
So, just
Class action.
for comparison, then last year we had 20,000 and now it's 61,000.
Correct. I've added the Castoro in there, which we may have to make a settlement, and then an increase for the condemnation hearing that's gonna happen, and the litigation against the tree contractor, and anything else that should pop up, because we found this year that we were way too tight on litigation. And in November, we were holding bills for months, and in November, I was scurrying to find money inside CAP to move into legal, for things like this. And
So this 61 does not include our possible $30,000.
it does,
It does include the
It does.
30,000 and we may have to pay.
it does, yes.
I have a comment about legal. And I know I've voiced this separately to individuals on the committee, or different individuals. But I get the feeling that because Steve is not at the meetings, or we don't have somebody from his firm at the meetings on a regular basis, that we get advice pertinent to bigger towns or larger municipalities that really is not relative to the Cranbury dynamics. I can think of the special permit issue, I can think of some of the other resident issues that we've gotten involved with. It's a little,
So you feel that because he's not here, he doesn't recognize.
he doesn't
our
recognize the uniqueness
needs?
of Cranbury. So, when I was looking at the budget, I was thinking it would be worthwhile maybe to have him at one meeting a month, just so that he can see the residents, see the dynamics of Cranbury. And then maybe then things like the special permit that we spend a lot of money on with legal fees, never get raised as something that we need to take action on, because you look at that and say, you know what, Cranbury is not a Hopewell, Cranbury is not a West Windsor, it's not gonna fly in this particular town.
Are you using the First Amendment and 16th Amendment issues that came up earlier?
That's another element of why I think that.
Yeah. Well, I think at the same time too is that, I think, and this is maybe my own paranoia, is that there's an inherent interest that if you are hours billed, you want things to take a long time. I mean, if you just can't, or longer, then maybe that's necessary. Maybe that's another example of it. I would say that I don't feel it's our responsibility necessarily to educate legal on the level of Cranbury. I think it should be obvious, especially with the tenure there. That being said, is that if it doesn't cost more to have someone here participating, I think that's one
Well,
thing.
it will cost. We
Well,
pay by the hour.
Right,
and-
so
The
is
meetings
there
would
a
cost more,
trade-off?
but
I don't know.
I think the meetings would cost more, but these special projects that end up getting engaged a lot of them go away.
Well,
You know,
yeah, no, I
and our meetings are about an hour in length versus 3 hours to have, research
I
done.
mean, I can honestly say with Steve Goodell's firm, they are very good about watching how much they charge. I've dealt with other law firms, not necessarily the case. They are careful about it. I honestly don't know, not being an attorney, how long something should take, but they usually get back to me right away with a short answer. Usually, do you want me to put it in a memo or just call you? It's quicker to call you. I can do a memo. That will take long. I mean, they're very good about watching what they bill. And I think you can see that from what we've spent on them over the past couple of years and what we budgeted, based on prior attorneys.
See, I'm a little concerned about having it, I think if we need them here, we want them here, but I'm a little concerned about setting it up so that the first meeting of the month he's at, because the agendas change. There may not be anything on the agenda that we need his input for. And then he's there. Yes, it's only an hour meeting, but it's an hour to get here, an hour to go home, so we're probably paying a 3-hour.
And I usually make it clear to him, like, this is a sensitive issue, understand where the other parties are coming from, and he does take that into consideration when he comes back with his.
Yeah, but I just think I really think with Steve, that he's a good attorney, but we're getting advice that's not pertinent to Cranbury. We're spending a lot of money on legal bills for things that are not pertinent to Cranbury, that I think if he was really familiar with the town, and his firm was really familiar with the town, he would go, you know what, this is not something that you need to pursue. We wouldn't be in the position of having some of these ordinances up for discussion. And even some of the advice about the actions of the township committee members and what they should do or they shouldn't do relative to interacting with the community. I think it's different here than it is in West Windsor and some other towns that they represent. So I struggle with the fact that how do we get, if he's not here at a meeting, how do we get him to really understand the uniqueness of Cranbury so that we don't spend all these legal bills? And quite honestly, part of me is sitting here saying, after all these years representing Cranbury, both on the zoning board and now as a township attorney, we shouldn't have had some of these recommendations come before us that have, because they should have that familiarity with the town already.
Well, I don't know necessarily even with the familiarity if it's going to equate that they'll know the interpretation will be different. And again, maybe my own paranoia is that there's an inherent interest to create billable hours, whether it's an attorney or anybody else that's billed in that fashion. I mean, the only thing I would say, if that's really a significant issue, is that there may be some point in time where there's a quarterly meeting on issues or something like that. And the reason I bring that up is that we have a similar scenario that's dealing with the township planner. It's just that we want to make sure that all the different moving parts that are affecting Cranbury are pertinent and that everyone is in the same line. But I don't think there's no additional cost to that, only because it's done on a somewhat regular meeting basis. And maybe there's something where, Steve Goodell is somewhat more involved with, or when he does come in, that there should be some sort of update on issues. I think that being said, if I net out the 30,000 that is built into this number, that takes it down to 30 or 31 for the south.
30,850.
Okay. So then, so let's say it's down to 30,000. It's 10,000 more than this, and that additional 10,000 is because we have the issue as far as the land scenario, I'm losing the word for a description.
Acquisition,
Yeah,
condemnation.
So I think net is probably not a significant increase year to year, and assuming that we don't have that exposure, that money goes back into the till. I would just say in general, that back in what Denise said, I think they have a good view of what Cranbury's operating in, but then I think, is there some value in having caps on certain issues or caps on certain expenditures before it goes to an assessment? Should we spend more on it or not? I mean, that's something for someone else to decide.
And I will say, like, we don't want to spend money on this, and Steve will say, okay, I'll get back to you with a 15-minute conversation. And he will, but when it comes to the bigger issues, like we have this year, and they snowballed and snowballed and snowballed.
And that's where I'm bothered by, because I question whether if it was handled a different way, it would have, some of these issues may not have snowballed as much.
So, part of the
If
obligation.
I might, just for a second.
Okay, I'm sorry.
When I was there, I was faced with an issue. It took up a ridiculous amount of my time.
Yep.
And I consulted with the attorney, and he suggested that one possible solution would be a special permits ordinance that he has experience in other towns. He came with that recommendation because I asked him. And we pursued it, and it didn't go anywhere because there's so often happens. When those chairs are filled, we came in. We've got 3,800 people we're supposed to be making decisions for. And if 30 people get in this room, and each one stands at that microphone and speaks in opposition, we came. We have to rethink that. I mean, I think that's a hell of a mistake. But that's how that happened. It was not Steve dictating to us what we had to do. It was one possible solution to a problem that would not go away.
Well, I think there were collateral issues to that. I don't think we always caved necessarily. I think the issue that came up, I think, did go haywire. Now, do I think that was a combined fault on that? Yeah, I think when you start having federal and constitutional arguments over certain expressions, it was insane, and I think there was some encouragement to go down the rabbit hole, I mean, use Alice in Wonderland stuff, on that particular case. I don't think that is that case is representative of the attorney relationship we have in general, but that scenario, I think, did get out of hand, and I think there were alternatives in addition to what Glenn was describing. I think the idea that to escalate it in the way that it did was not pertinent. So to that point, again, whether you put a cap on it or you spend a certain amount on a per issue basis, which I don't even know how to police that. I think going forward, what we have in here, the budget is relevant. Maybe you can revisit offline at some point some sort of ability to assess issues as they come up and to see what the value is from a legal standpoint.
And I think the one thing I'll say is the obligation that we have, it's not focused on any one issue that we're talking about here, the legal costs. It's bigger than that. We have to make sure that before we go and spend money on a topic, that we put it on a work session on a big topic. We think it's going to be a big topic. It's not a particular topic we've done in the past. There's been many. And there's been a number of times where we've discussed something ad hoc, we've gone off and done something legal, and then we show up, and then everyone fills up the room where we spent the money. So I think we just have to be very cognizant and think it through. And when we have those ad hocs, make sure that we say to ourselves, should we put this on a work session before we go and spend something? And I think that's one way we can manage those legal costs before we go and spend them. And I'm guilty of that. I've done it myself. There's been times that I brought up ad hoc things and we've gone off and worked on them, and then we show up in a room with people.
So you're saying it's the mulligan effect?
Yeah, it's all my fault, man. But I think you hear what I'm saying. We just have to do a good job of managing the agendas and making sure that we're alerting people as to what we're thinking about spending money